Good morning, afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm George Moss again here at allpointstv.com. And we are very glad to have you with us this afternoon here on a Tuesday. We're taping one day later here at the studio, and we hope that you will stay tuned for the next hour. Want to also thank WFOV for partnering with us here at allpointstv.com. And they are doing a fine job over there. We want to always commend them for what they're doing and adding to the information that's flowing from all channels here in the city of Flint and Genesee County. They're doing their part, and we're trying to do our part over here at the studio, WFOV. And we are so glad to see you doing the things you're doing. I tune in to the radio station all the time, and I think if I didn't listen to the station so much, I'd be able to get more reading in. But I'm still doing a lot of reading, and I brought a lot of books to the studio today.
I'd like to remind people, too, to check out Flint Talk, the posting forum that's been going on way before we started Flint Talk Radio, and then also All Points TV. It's been going on since early 2005, 2004, something like that. It's been going on a long time before, and it's got a lot of information out there. It gives you more stories and better coverage than the local media. So it's a Flint Talk. It's the posting forum. You have to register to use it, but it's not hard, and you can register to use that, and that gives you more insight too. There's Untangling Webs, a poster named Untangling Webs that does a tremendous job doing research on the local issues. So coming up, the reason why you and I were talking about the mayoral candidacy coming up, candidates coming in and doing stuff, and this Untangling Webs is very good at discovering more stuff about these candidates and stuff. So you should check that out on that forum. So
okay, that sounds real good. John, let me tell the audience about the books that I brought to the studio today that'll help me get through this hour. I brought 7 books, and they are not in any particular order. Nullification: How to Resist Federal Tyranny in the 21st Century. You know, the nullification, the idea of nullifying acts of the Congress and actions taken by the federal government that are unconstitutional. And that book is written by Thomas Woods. What about this book here? I keep on bringing this book back to the studio because I think it's still relevant to what we're talking about these politicians that are becoming more and more insane by the day. And this is the book written by Peter Schweizer called Throw Them All Out. And that book is one in which they're talking about the need to expel members from the Democratic Party, from the Congress, and also members from the Republican Party, from the Congress. Peter Schweizer is saying we should throw them all out. And that's about the bottom line because, it's too bad they can't all lose. This book by Ann Coulter, and I brought that to the studio a couple of times as well, it's called Adios America. And if we don't stop these politicians, and I don't care what party they belong to, if we don't stop these politicians, they're going to destroy this country. And that's what they're doing right now with this immigration policy, changing the demographics of this country and bringing in people that have no affinity for the foundational points of this country. They have no understanding of what was written by the founding fathers and have no allegiance to it. And they're bringing them in here because they cannot win the agenda, which is the global agenda, based upon the people that are here in this country that's standing between them and their global reach. And so they're just simply, through the immigration policy, bringing people in is going to change the country. And by that, then have the verdict being rendered by outsiders as they're now making the outsiders insiders. They don't intend to stop to end this crisis at the wall. These people are telling us that there is no crisis. And we are looking at it with our own eyes and telling us that our eyes are lying to us.
Well, the Democrats are sitting there salivating because they're saying, "Oh, look at our future voters," and as soon as they come across the board, they want a welcome package. And I'll tell you what, a movie that showed the corruption of the Democratic Party, but noticed it was the Gangs of New York. The movie Gangs of New York, it shows them wooing people with free soup and sandwiches when they came off the ships, and they started registering their vote right then. And that was showing the Democrats, and it says right on there, Democrat for the posters and stuff, the political poster, they're all Democrats.
Yeah, you remember Tammany Hall, right?
Exactly, that era. That was that era. The 1850, 1850 something before the Civil War, leading up to the Civil
Right.
War. And yeah, I mean,
And those that were in opposition to them taking the country over through this demographics being changed, they called them nativists. So as if we're supposed to just surrender the country.
yeah, it's like, see, if I was going to South and Central America or Mexico, or you and I say, we got thousands of our friends and family members that head down south to Mexico and just walk across their borders. They'd be horrified. They'd be shooting us. But we're supposed to be sit back. No, there is immigration. Everybody says, the conservatives are for against any immigration because they're all white people who are belong to their country. And that's not true. I mean, this unwarranted, unchecked immigration is going to affect those people who are of the lower classes socioeconomically. And usually those are other minorities. Minorities have been here for a while.
Yes.
So, I mean, so to see these people as being some great ally you're just going to hook up with and take control over, that's not going to happen. All right,
John,
they got their own interests.
To make it an issue of black and brown, they say, as if the country's against black and brown people. It fails to recognize the real problem. The people in this country, rightly so, are against persons breaking into this country that violate the laws of the nation coming in here and not going through the process of how the immigration laws allow person to come in. This country wants immigrants. To an extent, it needs immigrants. But you want them to come in through the legal process. You don't want them just going through the water, coming across the Rio Grande and coming into the country, and then the laws are being relegated to the dustbins of the history by not following the laws. We have laws in our books like they have laws in all the other countries. They have laws too. And if you're going to come into the country illegally, anyone that's not against that, they are against the borders and against the sovereignty of the United States. We have laws. We want those laws followed.
I'd like to point out too, people say we shouldn't be concerned about these people coming up here because they're coming up here to get a good life. It's like, well, if they have control, if their country, if we're all the same and we don't have anything to fear, why don't the people there try to affect change in their government? Because largely it's really corrupt. We're becoming more and more to resemble a very corrupt government.
Yes.
Both parties are selling the American people out wholesalely. They
should read this. I didn't bring that book. They should read this book called Dead Aid. This idea of allowing the persons to exit their country rather than staying in their country and resolve the problems that are there, rather than running to a country that has resolved the issue. We had to resolve the issues here. And running from one country to come here doesn't resolve the problems from the country they came from. Those problems got to be resolved. And they cannot be resolved by emptying their population into the United States. But that's what's happening right now. And Ann Coulter's book, Adios America, speaks to that. The left's plan to turn our country into a third world hellhole. And that's what's happening here. And one of the other books I brought, which we're looking at this in real time, is called The Liberal Mind, written by Lyle Rossiter, The Psychological Causes of Political Madness. And we're looking at that big time right now. A book by Mark Levine, Men in Black, How the Supreme Court is Destroying America. And is that ever true? Because this country is being destroyed by its politicians, and politicians are not only in the presidency or in the Congress, in the House, and the Senate. We have politicians on the courts. We don't have a separation of powers anymore in this country. We have politicals operating on all three branches of government, and the Constitution is in exile, just like Napolitano says. One other book I brought, which I think will be relevant to our conversation today, is the book called The South Was Right by the Kennedy brothers. I'm talking about the twins from North Carolina, who in 2005, I think it was, wrote this book called The South Was Right. And they're talking about the real reason why this country was at war, the secession war, not a civil war, but a secession war a war over whether or not they had the right to succeed or not. And finally, this book came in, and I brought this to the studio today because it finally came in last week. I had planned to talk about this book last week, but it had not. It was. I thought it was going to be there before our program. It came after the program that we did last Monday. It's called Family of Secrets by Russ Baker. And Gore Vidal said, one of the most important books of the past 10 years. I'm going to start off by reading some of the parts of this book. A couple of, I think it's 3 different excerpts I'll read from this book. Family of Secrets, America's Invisible Government, and the Hidden History of the Last 50 Years. And of course, they're not covering any of this in any classrooms in the country because this pulls the cover off of what's really going on. Let me pause from the book, so I want to say this before we get started. Dr. King, as he was going back and rethinking of his 13 years involved in the civil rights movement, began to question his thrust of the last 13 years, from 55 to 1968, and he began to have questions about whether or not he had been on the right trail. He told Harry Belafonte, for example, he said, "I really am beginning to wonder if I had made a mistake in ushering in the integration into what he considered to be a burning house." And I thought about that when I heard Al Green, representative from Texas, last week. This man is another nut who said that they asked him if he might be giving more credence to Donald Trump by raising impeachment, and if that might in fact cause Donald Trump to be elected by people who are offended by them trying to impeach the president, because after all, there were 63 million people that voted him into the presidency in 2016. And if you're trying to impeach him, you're trying to impeach the verdict of that many voters that went to the poll to install this man as president. And here's what Al Green, not the singer, not the one that's not posing a danger to the republic, but the man down there in Texas that is a representative from that state. And his answer was that if they do not impeach Donald Trump, then that will ensure his election in 2020. Now listen to that very carefully, because what he's saying is that if they do not impeach Donald Trump, then the American people will go to the poll in 2020 and elect him to a second term. So they have to stop that through the impeachment process. I mean, what is that indicating about Al Green? And Al Green just came out and said it up front, but that's what they're trying to do behind the scenes. They're trying to bring about impeachment. That's why they won't let this Mueller report go. Mueller's already made his report. And the report was not what they were claiming the report is going to be. They kept claiming that the report was going to show that Donald Trump, in order to be elected, colluded with Russia, and somehow that collusion, nobody's ever explained how it would have gone to change the outcome of the election. But they were claiming that there was collusion going on, and that caused Donald Trump to win and caused Hillary Clinton to lose the election, and therefore we have an illegitimate election that occurred November the 8th, 2016, and Donald Trump is inappropriately installed in office in violation of the canons that they claim the Constitution was violated, and he is in fact installed in the presidency because of something that went on here between Donald Trump and the Russians. Not a single Russian, by the way, voted in our election, but somehow that cabal between those two power centers, the campaign of Donald Trump and the Russians on the outside, that configuration of those two power centers caused the election to be overturned in terms of what the American people willed to occur. And against their will, we have this president put in there because of this cabal, this power wielding that went on the outside and the inside with the Donald Trump campaign. Nobody's explained how that would have occurred. I voted for Donald Trump, and nobody forced me to go to the polls and vote against my will, because as if I had determined to vote for Hillary Clinton, but I could not carry that will out, and I went and voted for Donald Trump instead. And I doubt if anybody can claim anybody else did that in terms of how that vote came out in back of this president. How has anybody explained how that would have occurred? How would that have occurred to have the vote against our will? There's 63 million voters, which is the number of votes that Donald Trump got in 2016. That 63 million voters would have had their verdict turned around against the candidate of their choice, Hillary Clinton, and somehow the vote was lodged in the Republican Party to this outsider instead. And Hillary Clinton said just this past weekend, said that you can run a great campaign. And you could, in other words, you could have done everything right. You could have run a great campaign as if she ran a great campaign and still lose the election, because she said you could have the election stolen from you. So the election that occurred in 2016 was stolen from Hillary Clinton. And if it had not been stolen, she'd be president of the United States. She didn't go to Wisconsin. And so that vote was one that she didn't get, but it wasn't because she didn't go into the state. She didn't win Wisconsin because the Russians caused it, or she didn't win Michigan because the Russians interfered. Nobody's explaining how that happened. And in the states that she won, there was no interference in those states apparently. But in the states that she lost, the 306 electoral votes that she did not get, and she got 232 electoral votes. Donald Trump got 306 electoral votes. In those states that she won, I guess there was no interference in those states. The interference was only in states that she in fact lost. Michigan, which Donald Trump came in here at 1 o'clock the day before the election, at 1 o'clock in the morning on that Monday. Donald Trump came into Michigan and had 35,000 people in Grand Rapids where he spoke. And this state was won by Donald Trump by 10,000 votes. He had 35,000 at his rally at 1 o'clock in the morning that Monday morning. Election took place Tuesday. He was here Monday morning at 1 o'clock. And the verdict was kind of turned. Not that I don't think that Hillary Clinton would have won the election, would have won the vote in Michigan if he had not come here. There was nothing that said he would have lost the state if he had not come. But by coming here, there were 35,000 voters that went to the rally at 1 o'clock in the morning, and that was very telling. And he carried the state, as I said, by 10,000 votes. And then over in Pennsylvania, which was supposed to be solidly in her corner, those 20 electoral votes were won by Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. And those three states had a total of 46 electoral votes. And Donald Trump won by 46 electoral votes. You have to have 270 electoral votes. Donald Trump had 306 electoral votes. 40, let's see, let me make sure my math is correct. 270, he had 306, that would be what, 36 electoral votes? He had 36 more electoral votes than were necessary. 36 more electoral votes. He needed 270. He had 306. And that election was won for the same reason that Donald Trump was able to set down 14 seasoned politicians. Don't forget now, in the Republican Party, there were 14 politicians running against Donald Trump in the Republican Party. 14 seasoned politicians. There were 17 candidates for the presidency in the Republican Party. 14 of them were politicians that had held elective office before. And in the Republican Party, nobody ever claimed that the Russians interfered with the election in the Republican Party, but 14 seasoned politicians were defeated in the Republican Party before you got to the general election. And if Hillary Clinton wants to start talking about the election being stolen, let's talk about Bernie Sanders in the Democratic Party, because Bernie Sanders had the election stolen from him in the Democratic Party because they didn't even vote for Hillary Clinton in the Democratic Party. They voted for Bernie Sanders. And every time he won a primary in the Democratic Party, the superdelegates, we need to look at that before we get to 2020 and understand why we have superdelegates. Why do we have our superdelegates in both parties? In case of what? In case that the voters go out of control and they vote the verdict against the party ownership. Because of what we found out in this last election, I certainly found it out, is that the two parties are private property parties. These are corporations. The Democratic Party is a corporation, and the Republican Party is incorporated. And that's why neither the Congress, House, or the Senate can come in and order anything that goes on in the primary, because that is a private property issue. And that's why they were trying to, that's number one, why they stole the election from Bernie Sanders. There's no law that stops them from doing that. The law would require them not to do things under the table in the general election, because there, the federal government has control there. But inside the two parties, not so. And that's why one thing went on inside the party, and they were trying to deny the nomination to Donald Trump, although he went to the convention and had the majority of primary votes. And they were trying to take it from him, but everybody's watching, and so it went through anyway. But they were trying to stop him at the convention. It just didn't, but it didn't work because American people were paying attention and they could not steal the election at that level. But they never thought, both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party never thought that Donald Trump would win in the general election. And they were shocked that the polls had indicated one thing and the voters went to the poll and had another verdict. Donald Trump came out and won the vote in the general election, and they could not stop this train. Now they're trying to stop it by saying that the vote was illegally acquired by Donald Trump. Tell us how that happened. Tell us how that occurred. Give us the explanation that shows that there was some way that Russia would have determined the outcome of this election. So now they're trying to bring about the impeachment. And I wouldn't have an argument with the use of that if they understood it. If the impeachment process was understood and then respected, and they would carry the process out through the Constitution, I wouldn't have any problem with that because it'd be a constitutional way of removing the president. But what they're saying about the impeachment process is wrong. And I brought this article to the studio because I want to read you what these so-called scholars are saying about impeachment. Al Green, you want to use the impeachment process to remove the president. Do you understand the impeachment process? Napolitano doesn't understand it, nor does Alan Dershowitz. And I ran this off so I could read what Napolitano says, and this is not true. The title of the article is Judge Knapp, meaning Napolitano, Judge Knapp on impeachment. Then they got a colon there. Congress can, this is Napolitano now, Congress can impeach anybody for the reasons set forth in the Constitution. And we're coming up on our break, but I want to tell you before you go on your break at WFOV that there are no reasons in the Constitution set forth for impeachment. Let me say that again. When Napolitano says Congress can impeach anybody for the reasons set forth in the Constitution, there are no reasons set forth in the Constitution for impeachment. Napolitano, Alan Dershowitz, Al Green, the reasons that are set forth in the Constitution are not set up for impeachment. They are reasons set forth for the removal of the person in a federal office. There are no reasons set forth in the Constitution for impeachment. And the reason why that is true is because impeachment is not a legal claim made. It's a political claim that's made against the office holder. And I'm going to show you that in the Constitution before we get off the air today. But Napolitano is incorrect in saying Congress can impeach anybody for the reasons set forth in the Constitution because there are no reasons set forth in the Constitution for impeachment. Only removal of the office holder is set forth in the Constitution. In the impeachment process itself, it just lays out the process for it. There are no reasons set forth in the Constitution for impeachment. I'm right and they're wrong. In other words, we have people that are running the country in our government. They are corrupt. The people out here that are the scholars that are talking about the impeachment process, they are ill-informed. So we have ignorance and we have idiots.
Well, I think it's actually either ignorance. It's also unwillingness to confront those who are already in power, especially people who are into what are you talking about? The former judge and all that. I couldn't pronounce his name, but these people are fearful of people in power because they know what tremendous. I think it's what it is because they're supposed to be the gatekeepers in a sense by calling fouls on stuff or umpires, and they're hesitant to because they're intimidated by the power. And let's face it. I mean, we talked about this before we went on air. I'm tired of people telling me I got to respect police officers. Respect, if you look it up, is an emotional connection. Whereas what you want when you're talking about police officers is compliance. Well, that's what all these other people are. They want respect, but to use force to get compliance, then they mean that automatically translates into your respect for them.
Right.
And that's what it is. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
They're saying right now, talking about respect, they're talking about William Barr is in contempt of Congress. Of course he's in contempt of Congress. I'm in contempt of Congress too.
Everybody who is an intelligent, rational, and honest person, that's the big qualifier. Right. If you're an honest person, you're going to be in contempt of these bunch of these dirtbag politicians in Congress.
You know what? I'm in contempt of Congress because Congress is in contempt of the Constitution of the United States. Of course I'm in contempt of Congress. And William Barr should be in contempt of Congress. Gerald Nadler in the House, a representative over the House Judiciary Committee that's talking about arresting this man for coming before the committee last week. And here they're trying to call the man a liar because he says that Mueller did not find collusion. And then what he does, which is what Mueller had not intended. See, Mueller was very smart in this report. Mueller knew that he could not bring a charge that he had found merit in the accusation that the president had colluded. And the reason why that would not stand is because if there was collusion, who are the colluders? And he did not have anybody charged with that. Okay, so we are now getting ready to welcome back WFOV. We're glad you're back. We're still ranting here. We're still on this rant. Mueller could not find in his report, could not write that there was collusion, because if there was collusion, you got to name the colluders. And nobody, not one person over a 2-year period of time was brought to trial or made to plead based upon collusion. It was lying to Congress, like Flynn, for example. Flynn, by the way, Flynn should have told the truth. They asked him if he had, in fact, had any contact with Russia. Of course he did, because after the election is over, you don't wait until you assume office before you begin to put your plans in place. You begin to have talks so that when you are installed as administration, you can hit the ground running. So after the election is over, see, they didn't talk about when did he have contact with the Russians. It was after the election was over, after November the 8th. As they're beginning to put the plans in place to deal with foreign governments, they are having contact with foreign governments. That has nothing to do with the election that was held on November the 8th. Flynn's contacts were in December of 2016. So they were trying to confuse the American people about when these contacts had occurred. Mueller knew he was, in fact, finessing the public. So therefore, what he did was to exonerate, not really to exonerate, because that's not the job of a prosecutor. The prosecutor, the special counsel, the special prosecutor's job is to find, to look at the facts. Was there a crime or was there not a crime? Not the collusion even a crime, but was there collusion, not collusion? And not finding collusion, he could not write a report and say he found collusion and not name the colluders. So he then writes that part and say they didn't have sufficient evidence. Why? Because nobody was charged with it. If there was sufficient evidence and no charges were brought, then the question is raised, why? So Mueller had to write the report, part 1, and find nothing there as far as collusion was concerned. But then what he did, and this is very smart on his part, but he was defeated in this also, is that he then, in part 2, about the obstruction, he left that question open. But what he did not count on is Bob coming behind him and looking at the report and then drawing a conclusion. Mueller didn't draw a conclusion. And let me tell you why he didn't draw a conclusion. This man's very crafty. He did not draw a conclusion because he understood the impeachment process, which they don't understand. What Mueller did was, in fact, move away from the legal question. That's the collusion part. But then the dumping the political question, that is the impeachment, which is a political process, not a legal process. I'll show that to you in the Constitution in a minute. And I want to show you exactly where it's located. It's located in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7. Dershowitz, have you read Alan Dershowitz? I'm calling your name out, and you too, Judge Knapp, on impeachment. It's outrageous. It's outrageous for you to write, Congress can impeach anybody for the reasons set forth in the Constitution. Let me tell you something. There is nothing in the Constitution, there's not one reason listed in the Constitution for impeachment. If it is, show it to me. I get sick of these idiots on TV confusing the American people about a document that if you read it, you could understand what I understand, and that is that they don't know what they're talking about. Alan Dershowitz, you and Napolitano, if there is a reason stated in the Constitution that spells out the reasons for impeachment, then show me where it's located. I challenge you to do it. Show me where there is anything in the Constitution that spells out the reasons for impeachment in the Constitution. Show it to me. You cannot do it because it's not in there. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5 talks about the process of impeachment. The impeachment is made in the House, and it says the House of Representatives shall choose its speaker and shall have the sole power of impeachment. Show me where in that language it talks about reasons for impeachment. You guys are a bunch of idiots to write this stuff here and put this stuff out in public. And if your claim is right, show me where that is in the Constitution of the United States. You dumb idiots, excuse me, I get mad about this because what they're doing here is suborning the document, the document of the land. You see the scholars, the Ayn Rand calls them. Well, she doesn't call them this. She says the intent of the intellectuals was for them to set the scholarly level for the operation of the Congress. Let us say they're the ones supposed to be the eyes and ears, the guides of the populace by informing the people about what the documents and so on and so forth say. But when they're out here saying this stuff right here, they are derelict in their responsibility as scholars. Scholars my foot. If you're saying things like this, Judge Knapp on impeachment, Congress, this is a quote, Congress can impeach anybody for the reasons set forth in the Constitution. I would challenge Napolitano, this is Tuesday. You can take Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, come back Monday when we do another show. Call the number, area code 810-250-7365, and show me in this document right here called the Constitution of the United States, you show me where there's a reason set forth in the Constitution for impeachment. Show it to me. You can't do it because it's not in there. And this is the same understanding that this other bozo, Alan Dershowitz. These people are supposed to be constitutional scholars making these stupid claims. There is nothing in the Constitution that sets up a reason for impeachment. You know why? Because impeachment is a political process. It is not a legal process. Let me read something to you here in the Constitution. You know, I really have to stop. I have to really get control of myself because this is so profane. I can't tell you how outraged I am. Let me read Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7 to you. And you bozos, and I consider Napolitano to be a bozo, and this other Alan Dershowitz, this man is an ignoramus. Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7. Let me read it to you. Let me find it first, and then I'll read it. Let me read this to you. Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7. In fact, Article 3 has 7 clauses to it. And I'm going to read this to you. Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7. Here's how it reads. Now, don't forget Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6 says that the trial of impeachment will take place in the Senate, and it will take a concurrence of 2/3 of the vote to, in fact, make the charge of impeachment stick. 2/3 vote. Concurrence, 2/3 concurrence. That's just the impeachment process. Where these bozos, and that's what they are, what these bozos like Napolitano are claiming is that the impeachment process is found in Article 1, Section 3. I'm sorry. The impeachment the impeachment process they're claiming is found in Article 2. Listen, folks, let me calm down. The impeachment process is found in Article 1, okay? Can we understand that? The impeachment process is found in Article 1. These idiots, that's who they are. They're absolute idiots. Napolitano, the number is 810, area code. Phone number 250-7365. I dare you to call it. I'm going to set you down. For you to say Congress can impeach anybody for the reasons set forth in the Constitution, there are no reasons set forth in the Constitution for impeachment. And if it is, where? You want to go into Article 2, Section 4. Let me quote it for you. You idiot. Folks, I'm sorry. I cannot maintain civility. This is outrageous. This is an outrage. Congress can impeach anybody for the reasons set forth in the Constitution. There are no reasons set out in the Constitution for impeachment. Where? The impeachment process is in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5. And the trial of the impeachment, which is brought in the House, the trial takes place in the Senate. That's Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6. Now, in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7, let me read this to you. You have to be an idiot to say the things these people are saying. You cannot be a constitutional scholar and say these things. And because nobody else seemed to understand the process except George Moss, I will tell you, you cannot say this and be a constitutional scholar. This is ridiculous. Let me read you Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7. I said Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7 has 7 clauses in it. I didn't look to see that. I'll tell you what it is. Because I got it memorized. You can't run that stuff by me that you're running by the layman. I'm not a layman. I'm what you claim to be. Let me read this to you here. Listen carefully. This is Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to remove from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. But the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law. In other words, the impeachment is a political process. You don't have to have a reason for it. If the Senate so determines that it will impeach, it requires a majority vote. But the check and balance system is part of the process, isn't it? Because then the check on the House, it will then go to the Senate where they up the ante. Because it understands the danger of the democratic process. You see, you have to understand the framers. They were fearful of democracy because a democracy can make a verdict based upon the numbers. So then, in order to check on the majority in the House, it takes a 2/3 vote to, in fact, agree with the verdict that they made in the House. 2/3 vote in order to bring about conviction. But here's what I was trying to make a comment about last week. I was saying last week that I wish what had happened in 1867, 1868, when they impeached Andrew Johnson. I wish what had happened to bring about greater clarity of what the requirements are of the Constitution. I wish what had happened in that is that they had convicted him of what they had charged him with in the House. For a reason that nobody else has been able to discern, because they don't understand the Constitution, and I do. I understand it, and Napolitano, 810-250-7365, and Napolitano does not understand it. If he understood, he would not have made this comment. And because Alan Dershowitz agrees with him, he doesn't understand it either. These people are idiots to make that claim. I wish they had, just for clarity purposes, not that I wanted to have Andrew Johnson removed from office, because Andrew Johnson was right in terms of his defiance of the Tenure of Office Act. You can't charge a president for treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors for carrying out the mandates of the Constitution. The president has a right to choose his cabinet. And Edward Stanton, that was inside of the cabinet, that was in fact a partisan to the so-called radical Republicans, radical because they did not want to follow the Constitution. They wanted to run the South into the ground because they thought the South was wrong. And they want to punish the South. And they have this guy inside of the inside the cabinet of Andrew Johnson that he wants to get rid of. And what they're contending is that if they have to, in fact, agree with the president's nomination for the cabinet office, if they have to agree upon the nomination, and they must, by the Constitution in Article 2, they have to, by a verdict of the Senate, they have to confirm the nomination. Then they're going to contend then that if they have to confirm the nomination of the president, in order for them to get rid of a member of the executive branch, in terms of, in this case right here, Edward Stanton, who was the Secretary of War, then they must get the approval of the Senate in order to get rid of him. And that's not true, and based on the Constitution. They were, in fact, in violation of it. And the reason why I wanted to have the verdict had been to, in fact, give the additional vote to convict the president on the impeachment charge is because if they had impeached him on that charge, they violated the Tenure of Office Act that is unconstitutional on the face of it, because there's nothing in this document that says that the president must get the approval of the House, or in this case the Senate, in order to remove someone from his own cabinet. Do we understand the Constitution of the United States here, folks? We have a separation of powers in this country. And if they had impeached the president and convicted him on the charges they had charged him with in the House, then we got a institutional crisis, because the president does not have to vacate the office of the presidency if they try to remove him on charges that fly beneath the reasons for the removal. And that's where Dershowitz is confused, and that's where Napolitano is confused. They're talking about what it takes not to impeach the president. They're talking about what it takes to remove the president. You idiots. Excuse me, folks. I'll tell you something. I can't stand it. I can't take it. Article 2, Section 4 is what Napolitano claim is quoting, but he doesn't understand it. Article 2, Section 4 doesn't set the reasons out for impeachment. Listen to this right here. Let me quote it. Look, folks, I'm right and they're wrong. The Constitution says in Article 2, Section 4, and these brain dead constitutional quote unquote scholars, no, I don't think so. In fact, I know they're not scholars. You can't be a scholar and say these things here. Article 2, Section 4 says this. Listen carefully. Alan Dershowitz and Napolitano, get the earplugs out of your ear and you listen also. Article 2, Section 4 says the president, the vice president, and all civil officers, they didn't say in the country, all civil officers of the United States. It doesn't even mean the governor. It doesn't even mean the state senators. It doesn't even mean the state representatives. All civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office. Did it say shall be impeached? Shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. Did you hear me say anything about it says they shall be impeached? Can you read? These people can't read. Did it say shall be impeached? No, it did not say that. Shall be removed from office upon impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, and other crimes and misdemeanors. So impeachment and conviction of impeachment can go on for a lot of reasons. But if you impeach and convict upon treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors, the person is removed from office. However, if they seek removal, listen carefully, you guys in Congress, because I heard John Dean, week before last, call Donald Trump a nitwit, because Donald Trump said if they impeach him, he's going to take it to the Supreme Court. And he's wrong in that. You cannot appeal impeachment to the Supreme Court. But he's partially right. You see, if you try to use the impeachment process for removal, listen carefully, and it falls underneath the requirements of Article 2, Section 4, then it does go to the Supreme Court. Because now we got a legal question on the table. And the legal question is, can you remove a person from office if you in fact charge him with treason? That's what they're trying to get the president on. The president is supposed to be has committed treason with Russia, and there was no treason, and the verdict of Mueller shows that. If they tried to bring impeachment and removal based on impeachment, based upon there is no treason, there is no bribery, there is no high crimes, and there's no misdemeanor, and they try to remove him anyway, and it falls short of what is required in Article 2, Section 4, then that goes to the court. We need to have an arbiter.
But there might have been a misdemeanor, because when Donald Trump read this stuff, they still want to bring him. He laughed and wadded up the paper and threw it on the ground, and that's littering. That's a misdemeanor. Okay, that's what it is. I mean,
yeah, John. They're saying that the other argument they would have about that is that if there was no predicate, in other words, if there's no predicate for what Mueller did. See, they're trying to say that they can bring about obstruction of justice even if the predicate was illegitimately lodged against the president. In other words, there was no collusion, but if you try to obstruct an investigation that has no validity, then just to try to stop that would be a violation, because you're trying to stop and obstruct an investigation that's been carried out illegally. What they're really saying here is that the president that was being charged with a crime, they can in fact get him if he defends himself. If he tries to defend himself, that's obstruction. The mere fact that he did not allow them to make a charge against him and stood on the sideline while they're trying to remove him, that's obstruction of justice. That's the claim that they're making. And if they had succeeded in that, which what they were trying to do, quite frankly, and they're still trying it, by the way, because of what this guy down in Texas said, they know they cannot defeat Donald Trump. You think those guys over there in that stable in the Democratic Party, I'm talking about Biden. Biden can't even put a sentence together. Biden has the same problem that Ruth Bader Ginsburg has. These people are senile. And if you listen to Biden, you see him stumbling over his words, forgetting what he's saying in the middle of a sentence. Biden can't run a campaign against Donald Trump. You might have him coming out of the blocks, and he's, because of his name recognition, he's running well in the polls in the Democratic Party. But once he gets out of the Democratic Party, first of all, he won't get the nomination. He didn't. It's not because he didn't have that which is required for the nomination in his own party. You can say you're going to have a woman running as the vice president all you want to, but the white male issue in the Democratic Party is also an issue, and 70-some years old and you're running in the Democratic Party, that's a problem there. There's that problem. And Joe Biden, write this down, Joe Biden will not be the nominee in the Democratic Party. The party's too far, the party's left Joe Biden, and he would not be the nominee. But they cannot defeat Donald Trump, and they want to use the impeachment process in order to bring that result about. I want them to try it. The president cannot be removed from office based upon impeachment. And I don't think Al Green understands that. Impeachment is only the accusation in the House of Representatives. He has to go to the Senate for trial. And it takes a 2/3 vote over in the Senate, and since there was no collusion, and Barr has said there was no obstruction. So on what basis are you going to convict the president on impeachment and remove him from office? Can't do it. Okay, I didn't get to everything I want to talk about, but we're going to continue this conversation because they won't quit, and until they quit, I won't quit. I'm right in this, and they're wrong. And Napolitano, the number is 810-250-7365. Give me a call where I can straighten you out. Okay, until next week, I want you to follow your dream, because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.